This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Sure. The motion that I would wish to move and to discuss, and I certainly recognize that we want to discuss Mr. Shampoo's motion, and I'm not looking to block that in any way. I very much support his motion. I believe it's a common sense one and one that needs all of our support, and so my hope is that that can be passed very quickly today. That said, the motion that I would like to put on the table, the motion that I would like to move today is as follows. That the committee immediately undertake 4 hearings on the government's decision to force social media services and podcasts to register with the government's Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, and that the committee hears from the Minister of Canadian Heritage for 2 hours, the chairperson and chief executive officer of the CRTC, the Deputy Minister of Canadian Heritage, and impacted stakeholders, including podcast hosts and other witnesses deemed relevant by the committee, and that the committee report to the House. Madam Chair, the reason why this is so important is because on Friday, there was this sneaky announcement made by the CRTC, the regulatory arm of the government, that podcasts would now be captured by Bill C-11, that they would be required to register with the government. And then being registered with the government, they of course would have their content censored. So it would be assessed based on a list of criteria determined by the government. If it meets that criteria, it's allowed to stand. If it doesn't, of course, we would expect the government will probably take it down. This is a form of censorship. And what's interesting to me is that in May, the CRTC said that they were not going to go after podcasts. They said that that was a myth. And here we are only 5 months later, and we find out that actually, yes, the CRTC has every intent to regulate podcasts. And so that's a huge problem. It's a problem for Canadians who enjoy listening to podcasts and who want choice in that realm. And so the motion that I'm moving today would be that we would listen to those individuals who are either creators who have podcasts or those Canadians who are consumers who enjoy listening to those podcasts, and that we would take the time to hear those important voices. The reason why this is so important is because at the end of the day, Canadians do deserve freedom to access the information that they wish to access, and to be able to put out the information that they desire to put out. The internet is the new public square. It's where the exchange of ideas takes place. And so we want to make sure that that sphere remains open and free and encouraging of dialogue and even robust debate. And so in order to make sure that that is in fact the case, I think we need to hear from a wide swath of witnesses. And so I would ask that this committee undertake a study that is 4 meetings long and that we hear from those witnesses across Canada. Now, I recognize that one of the arguments that I suppose one of my colleagues from across the way will likely bring up is that no, they're not regulating individual podcasters, they're regulating the platforms. That might be true, although the wording is quite convoluted that the CRTC is using. But if you regulate the platforms, it's a distinction without a difference, because it's users, it's podcasters that ultimately put their material on those platforms. And so if the platform is regulated, then the platform is going to be forced to regulate the podcaster, because they're going to have to abide by those regulations. And so again, I would say, actually, the CRTC went back on its word, therefore the government went back on its word, and actually is going after podcasters, those individuals who are bringing forward creative content for the sake of Canadians to be entertained or informed or other. And so I think that if the CRTC is going to go in this direction, the least we can do as a committee is take the time to hear from individuals on how this is going to impact them.
Thank you, Rachel. But just to be clear to everyone that we have a motion on the floor that's being debated. From the last meeting, there is still a list of people to speak to that. And when we finish with that motion, we will go to Rachel's, and I have a list of 2 people already who wish to speak to Rachel's. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. If you confer with the clerk, I believe she will confirm that we can only discuss one motion at a time.
Well, we already have one on the table, and I allowed you leeway to put yours forward as a notice.
Chair,
coming in today.
My motion is actually already tabled. What I did is I just moved it.
I know you did, but we already have a motion that's not finished on the floor.
I would ask for you to confer with the clerk as to what the standing orders are.
We have a motion on the floor.
I'm sorry, but it's actually against the standing orders what you're doing.
Okay, well, I think that for me, this is how meetings work, that we have a motion on the floor, it's not finished, we cannot move it off the floor. Peter?
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. I think your interpretation is absolutely correct. We'd already started debate on the previous motion. Mrs. Thomas is very experienced, and she actually knows what she's doing, counters the rules that govern committees. But, of course, if she disagrees with your decision, she can challenge the chair and let the committee decide. I certainly will be voting to sustain the chair.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Madam Chair, I would ask to hear from the clerk directly. My understanding of the standing orders, and I just refreshed my memory of them last night, is that only one motion can be discussed at a time.
It's already being discussed.
No, Madam Chair, it's not, because the motion has to be moved at the business meeting, and it has not. It was moved at the last business meeting. And so in this one, you gave me the floor first, and I have moved a new motion to be discussed today. Once that motion is fully discussed, then we can return to that other member should he wish to bring it back for discussion.
Well, then if you're challenging me, let's go ahead and call that.
I'm asking to hear directly from the clerk in terms of the standing orders.
on this, and it is up to me to make this decision, and I'm making it. That we have a motion on the floor, and we're going to continue debate on that motion. I allowed you the courtesy of speaking to your motion so we can deal with it later on.
I would be very careful with the precedents you set.
So you're challenging the chair. Let's call
because whatever you set today will be going
Those who
forward.
sustain the chair's ruling? Thank you. Those who disagree with the chair's ruling? So the chair's ruling is sustained, and we will continue with Mr. Shampoo's motion.